Can we have that music turned off, please? Who left that on? Sorry, after 9 years in office as Premier of Victoria, Australia, Dan Andrews has announced his immediate resignation, despite his election promise to serve his third term in full, handing the reins of power over to his hand-picked deputy and fellow Socialist faction member Jacinta Allen. When asked about the decision, Andrews said,
I said I'd stay, now I'm not. And it was true then, and I've changed my mind.
A typical response from the Teflon-coated man, but a shock to many who'd assumed he'd rule over Victoria for all of eternity. Heartbroken media shills, including PR Guy and Dan Fangirl, momentarily forced to find some true meaning in their lives, before quickly pivoting to 24/7 advocacy of Labour's voice referendum. Andrews was Labour's longest-serving Victorian Premier, and his departure begs the question, who could possibly want to fill his shoes? I certainly wouldn't want to be the sock puppet to do that, as Victoria faces an upcoming financial crisis. But at least none of us will have to sit through another Commonwealth Games, which comes as a relief to INN sports reporter Joe Sockick, who put together the following tribute highlighting Dan's greatest moments.
Oh, hi. I'm INN sport reporter Joe Sockick, and I'm thrilled to be here to pay tribute to the one and only Dan Michael Andrews. If politics were a sport, I think it'd be boxing, and Dan would be its prized fighter. High stakes, tough to watch, heaps of fun when you have weak opposition, and a little bit dodgy behind the scenes. So join me as I take a look back through some of the greatest knockout moments of Dan's long political career. Dan was a man of the people. As long as you were a digital person or invited to one of his controlled press conferences, he transitioned Victorian political discourse from public appearances and TV and radio interviews into the age of social media, where Dan's 1.5 million followers, more than every other state premier combined, received his carefully crafted media releases daily, and used the I Stand With Dan hashtag, with help from accounts like these, to encourage his followers to call anyone with opposing views cookers and right-wing extremists. Dan kicked off his premiership by spending $1.1 billion on not building the previous government's infrastructure projects, promising better and more expensive ones, like Melbourne's airport rail link. Unfortunately, that one didn't happen, but we did get the start of a suburban rail loop in the wealthy eastern suburbs that might even link to the airport one day. Level train crossings were removed en masse for just $8.3 billion. Luckily, Dan sold the Port of Melbourne to the Chinese, which helped pay for it. He promised to increase affordable housing and decrease taxation, and absolutely delivered, just the wrong way round. He promised to bring back state-owned electricity to lower costs and localised profits, and then immediately opened the idea to overseas investors before it stalled completely, along with the 59,000 jobs it was supposed to create. He promised to ban natural gas while cooking on his stovetop, and he promised to ban smoking outside and stop big tobacco advertising while having a dart outside a speaking function. He also promised better ambulance times and 4,000 ICU beds during COVID. Unfortunately, those promises never happened either. And then there was his big re-election promise to bring the 2026 Commonwealth Games to rural Victoria for the bargain price of just $2.6 billion. Only $1 billion more than Birmingham, England spent in 2022. And now they're bankrupt. But that didn't stop Dan getting the money from taxpayers, riding the excitement into an election win, and then calling a press conference and cancelling the games. He had no choice, of course, claiming the budget had blown out to $7 or more billion. And then he just turned around and walked away. Dan kept Victorians safe during the pandemic, despite a higher death count than anywhere else in Australia, by simply removing freedoms and right to work in the 262-day longest and often harshest lockdown on planet Earth, featuring these innovative strategies. Andrews was always so busy working for the people, he couldn't remember who put cheap security in charge of hotel quarantine, which led to an outbreak that killed over 700 people. He was fined twice for not wearing a face mask in public, while he was walking to a press conference to tell people to wear face masks in public. He did 120 straight days of tinkering with the lives of 6.7 million people.
Everybody right to go?
You will no longer be able to leave home. We can no longer have people simply out and about. You won't be able to go to the pub because the pub is shut. That doesn't mean you can have all your mates round to home and get on the beers. There will be a curfew across metropolitan Melbourne from 8 p.m. this evening, and it will run from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. each and every day. Being bored is much better than being in intensive care. 9 public housing towers will be the subject of a complete lockdown for no good reason whatsoever.
When state emergency powers were set to expire, he just wrote up new laws to continue them. And when they weren't passed in Parliament the first time, he got in the ear of these 4, who conveniently changed their vote, and now the government can call a pandemic whenever it wants. There were some difficult times. In 2013, Dan and his wife were struck by a dangerous push bike riding kid who T-boned their large SUV, causing horrific inconvenience to both of them, and some life-threatening injuries to the kid. Luckily, police forgot to perform their mandatory duty of breath testing those at the scene. And an ambulance report forgot not to say that their car had in fact ploughed into the bike at 60 kilometres an hour. When Dan wanted things done, he got things done. And his big build came with a big price tag. The state's clocked up $171 billion in debt, more than any other state in the country. And it's expected to blow out to $239 billion by 2026. That's why he did everything to keep money coming in, even bypassing federal advice and secretly signing a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative. While he was Premier, Daniel Andrews' salary increased to $441,000, the highest in the country. And he earned every cent, considering the stress of being involved in 5 separate IBAC anti-corruption hearings. But Andrews was a master of plausible deniability, and while his own ministers were found guilty of breaching parliamentary codes of conduct, misusing public funds for branch stacking operations, spending $388,000 of public funds to pay electoral officers to wear Labor-branded red shirts in marginal seats, and improperly influencing the awarding of contracts related to land sales, fire unions, health, education...
All right, Joe, wrap it up. Enough's enough, mate.
Yeah, I'm almost done. Anyway, despite a 12-month police investigation and the State Ombudsman report describing his government's conduct as absolutely disgraceful and a catalogue of unethical and inappropriate behaviours, Dan Andrews wasn't charged, so on and on he went until the day he resigned. The pudgy, geeky career politician described by his own colleagues as a ruthless, relentless, arrogant...
Take him off!
By golly, what a champion. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've been knocked out after watching that. You've got to admire a bloke who can take all those punches and still come out on top. He bows out as a legend of the sport of politics and will be one tough act to follow. But I wonder if retirement will make him consider the damage he's done through his career. What am I talking about? Of course it won't. Well, I hope you've had as much fun as I've had, and until next time, I've been Joe Sockick, and you've been watching my tribute to Dan, the Teflon-coated man, Andrews. Bye-bye now.
That was an interesting tribute there. You don't really think Joe's one of those cookers, do you?
No, I don't think so. I thought it was fairly balanced. I wasn't really listening, actually.
Well, at least those awful level crossings were removed.
Yes, those level crossings were removed.
Yep. And weren't they dangerous?
The level crossings?
Yeah.
Yes, it was certainly great to see them removed. Great work.